Here I am, ready to read another book to you today. And the book I chose today is called Extra Yarn. The author of the book is Barnett, and the illustrator is John Clausen. And I really enjoy the illustrations in this book. I hope you will too. Okay, here we go. Title page. Dedication page. And now the story. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black soot of chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with every color of yarn. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. But there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, for herself and Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet," said Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," said Annabelle, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could. And she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louie. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat, and even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for the other animals, too. Soon people thought Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Look at that. I never saw a sweater on a mailbox before, have you? Wow, look at this town. Things began to change in that little town. Do you remember how it looked at the beginning of the book, friends? I'm going to just turn back to that first page so you can compare. That's what the town used to look like. And this is what it looks like now. It's a lot different, isn't it? News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. "2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." 1,000,000, shouted the Archduke. Take it or leave it. Leave it, said Annabel. I won't sell the yarn. And she didn't. So that night, the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabel's house. And they stole the box and took it to the Archduke, who set off across the sea and sailed on the sea. Back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted the lid and he looked inside. What happened? It's empty. The mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But, there goes that box of yarn. But it turned out she was happy again. Look at this. Annabelle. She knit for the tree and for the cats and the dogs. So what do you think happened in that story? Why was the box empty when the Archduke opened it? And yet when Annabelle got it back, there was yarn in it. What do you think happened? Oh, I'd love to hear what you think happened. Go ahead and share with me. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.